Okay, just for a second. Imagine the absolute terror. One moment you're out on the ocean, and the next you're sliding into the dark, massive mouth of one of the biggest creatures on the planet. It's literally the stuff of nightmares and ancient legends. So let's dive into this and see if there's any truth to the tall tales.
So, here it is, the big question. The one that's been fueling stories for, like, centuries. Is it actually possible? Could you really survive an ordeal like that? Well, you might be surprised to hear that according to one very famous story, the answer is a big yes.
And this is our guy, James Bartley. His story became a maritime legend, one of those tales that's just so wild it gets told over and over. But was it true? Let's take a look at what he said happened.
All right, so picture this. The year is 1891. James Bartley is a sailor on a whaling ship. Things get chaotic during a hunt. A massive sperm whale attacks, and Bartley gets tossed overboard. He vanishes into the sea, and everyone just assumes he's dead. But that, my friends, is just where this crazy story begins.
So, according to the legend, his crew actually manages to find and kill that exact same whale the very next day. And as they're cutting it up, they feel something moving around inside its stomach. They slice it open, and you guessed it, there's James Bartley. He's unconscious, but somehow he's alive. And here's the weirdest part of the whole story. His skin was supposedly bleached a ghostly white, and the whole experience left him blind.
I mean, what a story, right? It's the ultimate tale of survival against impossible odds. But as time passed, people, sailors, scientists, you name it, started asking some pretty tough questions. Could this really happen? Turns out, the science tells a very, very different story.
Okay, so the first major, massive problem with this whole story happens right at the beginning. Before we even start talking about being digested, we've got to talk about just getting swallowed. And as it turns out, that's the first impossible hurdle.
Now, this is actually super interesting. You'd think the blue whale, the biggest animal on Earth, would be the one to worry about. I mean, its mouth is big enough to hold hundreds of people, but its throat is surprisingly small, only big enough for its favorite snack, krill. A human just isn't going to fit. The sperm whale, on the other hand, the one from our story, it's a predator that hunts giant squid, so it can swallow something our size. But there's a catch, a really, really sharp catch.
And this is the catch. A sperm whale has somewhere between 40 and 50 of these massive cone-shaped teeth, and each one is about 20 centimeters long. To put that in perspective, that's about the length of a chef's knife. And they aren't for chewing, they're for grabbing and tearing. Your journey would end right there in a pretty gruesome way.
So right off the bat, this idea of being swallowed neatly and in one piece, it's just not happening. You'd have to be impossibly lucky to get past those teeth without a scratch. But, for the sake of argument, let's just say you are. Let's say you make it past.
Okay, so you've done the impossible. You've slipped past a gauntlet of knife-sized teeth. Congratulations! The next part of your journey is the trip down the esophagus, and trust me, a whole new set of horrors is about to begin.
Let's just walk through this. First off, it is pitch black, and it's slimy. Then, powerful throat muscles start crushing you, squeezing you on your way down. There's basically zero oxygen, and the air that is there is quickly being replaced by methane gas from the whale's digestion. You'd suffocate in just a few minutes. And while all of that is happening, the digestive process has already started, with corrosive hydrochloric acid beginning to work on you. Now, let's circle back to that really specific detail from the story. Remember? Bartley's skin was bleached white. It sounds super dramatic, but it actually shows a complete misunderstanding of what something like stomach acid actually does.
Yeah, bleaching is the exact opposite of what would happen. Hydrochloric acid doesn't make things white. It dissolves them. It breaks down tissue, fat, protein, everything. Your skin wouldn't turn white. It would start to burn and literally disintegrate. At this point, the story is already scientifically impossible.
All right, let's keep going. We're heading deeper inside the beast. If by some absolute miracle you survive the teeth, the crushing throat, and the lack of air, you'd end up in the whale's digestive system. And this is the point of no return.
See, a sperm whale doesn't just have one stomach. It has 4. You'd splash down into the first one where these incredibly powerful muscles would just churn and crush you. From there, what's left of you would get passed from one stomach to the next with acids just relentlessly dissolving your body until eventually only your bones are left to be, well, ejected. There is no scenario, none, where a person comes out of this alive.
But hey, let's try to find a silver lining in this incredibly grim situation.
Sperm whales love to eat something called the neon flying squid. So for a few brief, terrifying moments in that first stomach, you might get a pretty spectacular light show from another bioluminescent creature sharing your awful fate. Small comfort, I know.
So, when you look at the biology, the chemistry, and just the pure mechanics of it all, you have to call it. The legendary tale of James Bartley, it just doesn't hold water. Let's put the story and the science side by side and make it official. I mean, this really says it all, doesn't it? The claim, swallowed whole. The reality, shredded by dozens of teeth. Survived for a day? Nope, you'd suffocate in minutes. Skin was bleached white? No way. It would be dissolved by acid. And rescued alive, science says, you'd be completely digested. So yeah, myth officially busted.
And here's the real takeaway from all this, the most important thing to remember. Despite their incredible size, whales have absolutely zero interest in eating people. Any stories you hear are almost certainly accidents. We are not on their menu. They're these magnificent, complex animals, not some kind of sea monster from a storybook.
And that kind of leads to a final thought. We've spent all this time talking about what it would be like inside a whale. But if these intelligent, incredible animals could actually talk to us, what do you think they'd have to say about us and all the stories we tell about them? Now, that's a question